eat your way to a happier and healthy life. Well, that is the view of Dr. Chidi, who is a guru of lifestyle medicine, and he joins me now. Hi, Dr. Chidi.
Good evening.
Wonderful to have you on the show. Listen, it's very exciting to have you on the show because we're a few weeks away from exiting lockdown, and perhaps now is an opportunity to turn our bodies into a lean, mean fighting machine ready for the outside world, because a lot of us have let ourselves go a bit during lockdown. So what's the best starting point for, a step in the right direction to get back to rude health and maybe the kind of physique that we can only dream of?
Well, that's a great question, and it's so appropriate for what's happening right now. I mean, if I was to really try to break it down, I'd say it's a mixture of meals, movement, and mindset. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about
and
meals,
McDonald's, did you say McDonald's? Was that the fourth one?
I purposely left out McDonald's.
Okay, that was me imagining that.
Well, there is some lettuce in the Big Mac, so you never know. But the meals, when we're talking about meals, let's think about having heavily plant-based meals. So, lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, whole grains. We know, even when I'm helping people to lose weight, you can actually lose weight by eating more. And eating more, meaning eating more of the whole plant foods. Because you try and fill yourself up with that stuff, a couple of hours later, you're going to feel hungry again, because even though there's a lot of bulk, there's not a lot of calories there. So you can actually feed yourself, feel good, feel fulfilled, have a beautiful looking plate, and not be putting on so much of the weight. So when we're talking about meals, definitely lots of fruit, vegetable, whole grain, seeds, and beans. Talking about movement, well, I hope even in the lockdown, people are taking the opportunity to get outside at least once a day and exercise. I always say to people, get out and just walk. Just walking for an hour is so good for you. Not only does it burn the calories, it actually helps with your mood. It actually helps you feel better. And that kind of brings us on to the mindset.
Yeah.
We've all been in this together for the last year or so. Being locked in, being locked down, plays havoc with our minds. So what should we be doing about it? Yeah, it's about how we're thinking, how we're getting on with each other, what connections we have with each other. Can we actually start to understand each other rather than just fly off the handle? But meals, movement, and mindset is the best place to start.
And of course, it's a virtuous circle. And when you get a couple of those things right, then they all fall into each other, don't they? And similarly, if you're not moving and if you're eating junk food, and if you're doing those two things, then you're going to get depressed, actually. So it's always a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy and a cycle.
You're absolutely right. And the one thing I like to tell people is, as beautifully designed as our bodies are, no matter what you may think we look like, we're all wonderfully put together. We can actually fool our bodies sometimes. And the thing is, the more you give your body, the more it wants. So if you want to sit down, eat pizza every single day, you're going to want more of it. If you take that little effort to just get up, move a bit more, go out, exercise a bit more, your body will then start to crave it. So the more you do, as you say, it is a virtuous circle. It enhances everything you do. And as you get out, do more, you feel better, and it almost programs you to then want to eat healthier.
So let's imagine we're going to turn over a new leaf tomorrow morning, perhaps. Okay.
Yes.
Because we've got something like 4 weeks until the 12th of April, which is a big moment of unlock for the country, hopefully. So that's a month in which you can probably achieve quite some transformation. So food-wise tomorrow, we wake up, what's the first thing we do?
Wake up. One of the best things to do is just have a glass of water, start to clear your system out. But I'll tell you something. When I'm helping people to reverse things like diabetes and hypertension, I ask them to do something slightly strange for breakfast. I say, well, look, let's forget about cereal for a while. Why don't we have a different sort of meal in the morning? And it could be a salad, a soup, a stew.
Oh my gosh, it could be protein,
yes,
couldn't it?
It could indeed. It could indeed. It's just doing things slightly different, because if you're really trying to lose weight, well, then let's start to reprogram your taste buds, reprogram your actual routine. Eating those plants, those grains, those beans, even early in the morning, allows you then to fill up without having so much of that energy, the high energy. And then you can get through the day, you get hungry again several hours later. I usually eat twice a day, for breakfast, and I have an evening meal. And that gives you a bit of a fast during the day, as well as the fast you've had during the night. You're starting to lose weight just by the week. I mean, within weeks, you can see the difference.
So Absolutely. In the morning, therefore, you'd be talking about just having lots of plant-based food and water. Yes. Are we allowed coffee? Because coffee's technically a plant, isn't it, Dr. Judy?
Well, look, I'm not going to deny you coffee, but for those people who are slightly worried about the blood pressure, I would try and avoid it.
Okay.
I mean, I know lots of people who take hypertensive medication, they're taking coffee, they're just cancelling each other out. Mm. So if you're worried about high blood pressure, certainly try and avoid that. Have the water instead. You can have loads of berries in the morning, have a smoothie in the morning. That's perfectly good for you.
That's great. And then what about that evening meal then? What might that look like?
Yeah, so I always say, when we're talking about meals should be attractive. Sometimes when we're talking about health food, we kind of make it look like it's a big chore. So make sure that it is a variety of colors, a variety of textures, and something you like the taste of. So for me, I can give you my example. I tend to eat a lot of whole grain rice or red rice, have a stew with it. Could be tomato, onion-based stew. Have all sorts of beans, all sorts of fruit, all sorts of vegetables with it. Make it, we've all got our own tastes. And for our own taste, there's usually a type of food, a class of food that we can have that will not just make us healthy, but we can actually enjoy it at the same time.
How did you get into lifestyle medicine? Because I know you trained in surgery, general practice, yes, and lifestyle medicine at Cambridge, UCL, and Johns Hopkins in the States. Tell me about your journey yourself as a practitioner.
Well, thank you. Well, I've always had the idea in my mind that maybe rather than just treating people as doctors, we can actually, dare I say, cure people. That was always in the back of my mind when I went to medical school. Mm. When I was up in Cambridge doing surgery, there was one specific department I was in. We were doing cardiothoracic surgery. So we were helping people have bypasses for cardiac surgery. And there was a gentleman who came in, and he had already had a bypass. And I was sitting next to the professor, my boss, and my boss told him, "You're too sick to have another operation." This is at one of the world's best cardiothoracic centers. So we let that man go home, and within a few months he died. And I thought to myself, well, with all the knowledge, with all the technology, we can't save a guy like that.
Yeah.
So I then looked into it. I reached out to America. I saw some wonderful doctors like a gentleman called Dean Ornish, who helped out Bill Clinton. And I saw that they were researching into reversing heart disease. So I went out, spent some time with them, and I said, okay, this works. So rather than them coming to me as a surgeon, we could actually reverse the heart disease by changing their diet and their lifestyle. I came back to the UK, started doing things with reversing blood pressure, reversing type 2 diabetes, and that's how it really progressed.
Indeed. Now, there seems to be one common theme, which is no meat. Is that right? And no fish?
Well, I mean, that's the quickest route, I must say. That is the quickest route. It's not exclusively that route. There are people who do other regimes that do involve meat and fish. But for me, and how I see the evidence, the more plant-based material you have, the greater your chance of being cured of disease or actually eliminating the disease and stopping your risk.
So things like the reversal of type 2 diabetes, is that achieved through the weight loss that comes with the food that you recommend?
That's a great question. That's what people thought at the beginning. They thought it was just, if you just lose weight, you'll reverse type 2 diabetes. Well, the truth is there are people who are not overweight and have type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
So it's not all about the weight loss. It's really...
And what do they call them? The tofus? What is it? Thin on the outside, fat on the inside?
Very, very good. Toffees. Thin outside, fat inside. Mm. And indeed, are you a doctor?
I'm a quack.
you know your
I've got the internet.
But that is in fact quite important, because many people think, okay, well, I'm thin, I must be okay. But that visceral fat that we talk about, that's the fat that surrounds the heart and the arteries and the lungs. That's the the toxic fat that leads to diabetes and cancer and all those issues. So even if we're quite slim, we can still be at risk. But yes, it's not just about losing weight. It's really getting to the heart of it, is reversing the cell's ability to resist insulin. In other words, we want to make all the cells in the body more insulin sensitive, because a type 2 diabetic makes all the insulin they need, but the cells aren't responding. So you don't get sugar into the cells, and that's what causes the problems.
Well, indeed. And so insulin is obviously the key hormone, isn't it? Because it's the main fat storage hormone of the body. When insulin is raised, even with somebody that's not overweight, but just in a high insulin state, it's inflammatory, isn't it? And
that's right.
A lot of the issues with just the Western diet and the Western lifestyle is that it all boils down to that one particular hormone, and all of the junk food raises insulin, doesn't it?
You're absolutely right. So insulin does so many things. Yes, it helps us store glucose, but as you say, it tells us to make more fat. It is inflammatory, which means it actually helps to harden the arteries, raising blood pressure. It causes cancer cells to grow like crazy. So it's linked to so many different things. So part of the regime of anybody's healthy lifestyle is getting those insulin levels down. And often people who have type 2 diabetes, way before they have diabetes, they have high blood sugar. But even before that, you'll find that they have much higher blood insulin levels. And that's an interesting test to have, because your blood insulin levels go high before you become a diabetic.
Some might be listening thinking that it sounds fantastic, but how am I going to survive on salads and pulses and lentils and broccoli? People might be wondering about protein and other sort of these key nutrients that perhaps the body needs. I'm sure they're in your diet, but where would they be found?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because if you look at beans, for example, they have more protein per calories than any steak you can have. And I would refer people to the good old gorillas in the wild. I mean, they're eating mainly plant-based material. They're genetically almost 99% the same as us, and they're doing pretty well in terms of muscle bulk. And even great athletes. I remember the days of Carl Lewis. Carl Lewis was a vegan. He was one of the fastest runners on the planet. So it's more than possible to get all of your protein, more than
what about this? What about this that I've read, elsewhere that things like pea protein and stuff are great, but they're not as bioavailable as possibly protein from fish and meat. What's your sort of view on that one? This sort of bioavailability, that yes, the metrics might appear very high, but the amount you absorb is a lot less.
Yeah, well, as I say, it seems to work quite well for millions of people around the world and most of the animals. So it's a nice argument, but it doesn't really hold water. Often people like to say, well, in a steak you get so many different amino acids. It's like a total protein. Well, you know what? We're not supposed to just eat things like a slab of beef. We're supposed to have a variety on the plate.
Yeah.
So some beans may have some amino acids, some plants may have different amino acids. You put them together, make a beautiful meal. That's what we're really made for.
Also, I've got to say, Dr. Chidi, I've seen you topless, and whatever you're doing, it's working.
Well, you've been looking through my door.
I'm delighted to say that these images of you are publicly available. But you are a very, very fit man, and you obviously. I mean, what's the secret of your success? You have this amazing plant-based diet. You've got a great mindset, and then you I don't know. Do you go to the gym? What about that on the physical side? I mean, you mentioned going for walks, which I completely agree with. It's one of the few positives of this pandemic has, for me, become the daily habit of a walk, which I didn't do before. But above and beyond that, there's a great debate raging about aerobic exercise, going jogging and swimming and that kind of stuff, versus the kind of anaerobic, lifting heavy things. What do you think's the best thing for the human body?
Well, yes, that is interesting, and it's interesting how we as a society try to create a dividing line, either or, when really it should be both. Aerobic exercise, just as you say, going out for a gentle walk, a cycle, even a light jog, it's not just great for your heart, it's great for your mind. We know that. But that anaerobic exercise, that work that we do when we're straining, for example, in the gym, well, if you're into the aesthetics, should I put it that way, if you want to look a little better, if you want to have a little better shape, you're going to need a little bit of resistance work. But I always say, be careful with the resistance work, especially you have things like high blood pressure, because it can actually spike your blood pressure even higher. So do the aerobic work. Once your blood pressure is absolutely fine, you can do any type of exercise you want, whatever suits you. I say the best exercise is the exercise you enjoy doing.
But, very open to your comments about plant-based and beans and lentils and seeds and nuts. And I mean, there's just such a panoply of food out there. And I think that the key theme is real food. And just not food that comes out of a box with an ISBN number, a barcode, and a million ingredients.
Absolutely, yeah. Try and stay away from those processed foods, because it's not just the sugar or the salt or the fat. There is something about the way that they are processed that makes our body react against it. It makes our body actually gain weight at a more rapid rate than we can even imagine. So, yeah, you're right. Real whole food, identifiable food, whatever you think is good for you, whatever you like, make sure it's real whole food.
What about wheat and gluten?
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, I mean that is really the flavour of the month right now. And for certain illnesses, and I'll name them, I mean, autoimmune diseases, things like thyroid disease, lupus, things like that. They are generated often by your body generating antibodies to proteins such as gluten or proteins such as casein that's present in milk. So what we find, and it's not that wheat is bad for us. We've been having it for millennia, but some of the processes that we've used to farm wheat to help it be hardy through the winter doesn't really work for us or for some of us. So some of us have severe wheat intolerances, but many of us will raise antibodies to those proteins to cause these sorts of illnesses. So part of a regime for reversing autoimmune diseases would be to eliminate wheat, at least for a period of time.
So would you say steer clear just to be on the safe side?
I would say, well, I do try to steer clear of wheat, but you don't have to. Most people don't have to, but certainly if people are sensitive to any kind of autoimmune problem or any kind of hypersensitivity, I would try a period away from wheat.
Okay, yeah, have a little break from it, and certainly don't make it a staple, I guess. Just have,
Absolutely.
a bit of bread if you want. If we're worried about keeping insulin down, we don't want to go crazy with the bread anyway, do we?
You're right.
Final thoughts then. So refined sugar, that's out, obviously.
Absolutely.
What about alcohol, Dr. Chidi?
Well,
is there a permitted alcohol?
Oh, well, I'm sorry to say, but for many reasons. Alcohol, first of all, is heavily, if you think something like Coca-Cola has a lot of sugar in it, alcohol has pretty much double that. So if you're really trying to lose weight, alcohol is not for you. Look, the wonderful flavors present in alcohol from the grapes from the skins of grapes is fantastic, but the actual alcohol, that toxic point is actually a poison. So it will do your body a little bit of damage. Okay, so that's why the liver has to work so hard to detoxify it so that it doesn't kill us. But I don't recommend any levels of alcohol myself.
I think in that case, I'm going to do a deal with you. Okay, I'm having the lentils, I'm having the beans, I'm having avocados, I'm having my wonderful brown whole grain rice, and then if I can just have a bit of coffee, I think we can do a deal.
Go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Leave the beer to one side because I know it's basically lemonade in a glass, and I might just allow myself a small filter coffee just to get things going in the morning. Otherwise, I really would be brain dead. Is there a place where my listeners can go to find out more about your work, Dr. Chidi?
Oh, absolutely. Just on the website, drchidi.com. That's fantastic. And if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I'm on at Dr. Chidi MD. But yeah, you can just see even some of the testimonies of people who have reversed their diseases. For most people, we don't have to live with hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, etc.
Amazing. What a fantastic message. I know you've just transformed lives, and your website is called, as you say, Dr. Chidi, CHIDI.com. And I look forward to our next encounter, Doctor. What a brilliant chat. And I'll be hoovering up that hummus tomorrow.
Wonderful. What a pleasure. Thank you.
Great stuff. Many thanks to Dr. Chidi. There you go. Fascinating stuff.